My name is Claire. I spent 8 years of my life building my department from the ground up. When I joined the company, we barely had any high-value clients. But I was young, ambitious, and determined to prove myself. I worked late nights, skipped vacations, and said yes to every impossible task my boss threw my way. He used to say, "You're not like the others. You're a builder." I believed him. I believed that hard work would eventually lead to respect, that loyalty would be returned, that someone would notice the sacrifices I made, but I was wrong. So incredibly wrong. Just 2 weeks ago, I secured a $2 million deal with a corporate client we'd been chasing for over a year. It was the biggest win of my career, and the biggest in our department's history. Everyone congratulated me. Everyone except my boss. He just smirked and said, "That's what we pay you for." No thank you. No bonus. Not even a moment of shared pride. I felt something crack inside me that day. So when I had a scheduled vacation day coming up, a day I had requested 3 months in advance, I decided to use it for something I hadn't dared before, an interview. Not because I had already made up my mind to leave, but because for the first time in years, I wanted to know what my life could be like somewhere else. Somewhere I was valued. I wore my best suit. I walked into that office with my head high. The interview went well. Better than I expected. And for the first time in ages, I felt hope. But I had no idea that back at my current job, someone was watching. The very next morning, I walked into the office like usual. I had my coffee in hand, a polite smile on my face, pretending that everything was just as it always had been. But the atmosphere felt off. My teammates were quieter than usual, avoiding eye contact. My manager, Sam, didn't say good morning. He just called me into his office with a flat tone that made my stomach twist. As I stepped inside, he shut the door behind me with a little too much force. Then he leaned back in his chair like he was doing something casual, but I could tell. From his eyes, he was itching to pounce. "So, how was your vacation day, Claire?" he asked. His lips curled like he already knew the answer. I blinked. "Fine." He raised a folder and tossed it on the table in front of me. Inside were printed screenshots of my LinkedIn activity, emails I'd sent from my personal account, and even a blurry photo of me entering the lobby of the building where the interview took place. My breath caught in my throat. "You were interviewing, weren't you?" he said. "During a time you're still technically ours. Do you understand how disrespectful that is?" I wanted to scream. I had worked overtime for years. I had saved this company millions, brought in even more, and sacrificed almost every part of my personal life. And now I was being interrogated over one vacation day. One single day I had used to explore the smallest possibility of a future where I wasn't treated like trash. "You can't be serious," I said quietly. "Oh, I'm dead serious," he snapped. "We don't need people who already have one." Foot out the door. I stared at him in disbelief as the words rolled out. "You're fired, Claire." Just like that. No warning, no write-up, no acknowledgement of everything I had done for them. I packed my things in silence while everyone pretended not to watch. A few colleagues messaged me afterward, saying they were shocked, but most stayed silent. But deep down, I wasn't angry. Not really. I felt calm, like something had been released. A door had slammed shut, sure, but I wasn't on the wrong side of it, because what Sam didn't know was that I hadn't gone into that interview out of desperation. I had gone in prepared. The truth was, I had been planning for this moment for almost a year. I didn't want to be one of those people who complained about how badly they were treated and still stayed in the same place forever. I had been building something quietly, patiently, not out of bitterness, but survival. That vacation day interview wasn't my first. It was my last. I already had an offer in my inbox. I had already signed it. What Sam didn't realize when he fired me was that he wasn't taking anything from me. He was simply speeding up a transition I had already chosen. The company I was joining was a rising star in the industry. The CEO had personally reached out to me after seeing the strategy I used to close a $2 million deal that made headlines in our trade circle. They didn't just want me, they respected me. And they weren't going to micromanage or second guess every move I made. They were giving me a leadership position, a team of my own, and a signing bonus big enough to make my jaw drop when I first saw the number. But more than anything, they gave me something I hadn't felt in years: value. I took a couple of weeks off before joining. Not to travel or relax, but to breathe, to come back to myself. I realized how much I had been tolerating. The constant pressure, the fake smiles, the invisible weight of knowing I was always being watched but never truly seen. I spent some time with my parents, who always told me not to rock the boat and be grateful for a stable job. When I told them what had happened, they panicked at first, asking, "Are you okay? What will you do now?" But when I explained the new offer, the promotion, the pay, their tone shifted. Suddenly, I wasn't the reckless daughter anymore. I was the daughter who knew her worth. Meanwhile, I watched from a distance as the company I left began to flounder. That big client I had brought in, they called me personally to ask where I was. When I told them I'd left, they replied, "So, have we? We only stayed because of you." One by one, I heard that deals were falling through. New management didn't know how to hold the relationships I had nurtured. The systems I built began to crack without the person who created them, and Sam? He had to explain to the board how he had let the woman behind their biggest account walk out the door over a vacation day. As I stepped into my new workspace for the first time, I couldn't help but feel a sense of triumph mixed with surreal calm. The sleek, modern office was nothing like the stuffy, judgmental halls I had left behind. Here, every smile and handshake felt genuine, as if everyone finally recognized my true potential. I sat at my new desk with a sense of purpose that was foreign, yet liberating. In meetings, I was no longer the backbencher constantly overshadowed by doubt. Now I was the strategist. I confidently presented ideas, shared insights from that groundbreaking $2 million deal, and suggested innovative strategies that left the room buzzing with excitement. I realized my talent was not only in closing deals, but in seeing opportunities where others saw obstacles. As weeks passed, I began connecting with my team. I encouraged open conversations, celebrated every small victory, and made sure every voice was heard. I found that when people are respected, they give their best. My new boss, a visionary with a refreshing approach, seemed to listen to every detail I offered. The contrast was stark. Here, I was valued for my skills, my insights, and the effort I had put into building lasting relationships. Every day, I discovered a bit more about myself. I wasn't the desperate person who needed the approval of a toxic past. We were rewriting that narrative with every new project, every opportunity that allowed me to shine. I still thought back to the moment Sam fired me. It wasn't just a dismissal. It was a catalyst for the transformation I had been yearning for. Instead of lingering in resentment, I channeled that sting into the drive to become better, more decisive, and truly unstoppable. I also began reconnecting with old colleagues from my previous company. Many of them admitted they regretted taking me for granted and even hinted at losing key accounts without my expertise. It was a subtle reminder that sometimes the best revenge isn't in bitterness, it's in success. I wasn't trying to prove anyone wrong anymore, not in the way I once thought I had to. I was simply moving forward with confidence and conviction. That period of intense transition wasn't without challenges. There were moments of self-doubt and flashbacks of humiliating emails and cold boardroom conversations. Yet, with each passing day, I built more resilience. I learned that the scars of rejection often pave the way for new beginnings, if we're brave enough to see them as marks of strength rather than weakness. Every email congratulating me, every enthusiastic nod in meetings, and every word of encouragement from my team affirmed that I had made the right decision. I was finally in a place where my hard work, talent, and integrity were not just recognized, but celebrated. And every day, I woke up ready to build a future that was entirely my own. One afternoon, a former client of mine, one of the biggest accounts I had ever handled, reached out on LinkedIn. He had learned through the grapevine that I was no longer with my old firm. What surprised me was that he didn't seem surprised at all. "They were never good enough for you?" he said bluntly. "Want to handle something bigger?" That message turned into a conversation, and that conversation turned into a game-changing deal. I brought the client to my new company, and with that, we signed a multi-year partnership that would place our firm into an entirely new league. It wasn't just a professional win, it was personal. I had proven to myself that my instincts, my strategy, and my values could drive results no matter where I worked. But something else shifted in me. I wasn't just working to succeed anymore. I was working to build something of my own. I started sketching out ideas for my own consulting agency. Quietly, after hours, I laid the groundwork. I talked to mentors, read books, studied market trends, and created a blueprint for a business that valued people, loyalty, and innovation. I kept working at my current firm during the day, but at night, I built my vision brick by brick. For the first time, the thought of being my own boss didn't feel like a fantasy. It felt like the next step. Every failure I had faced, every insult I had swallowed, every time I had been dismissed or underestimated, it had all taught me how not to lead. Now, I was designing the kind of workplace I always wished I had. What truly pushed me forward wasn't revenge. It was clarity. Clarity that I didn't need to play small to fit into someone else's version of acceptable. I didn't need validation from a title or a boss who saw me as expendable. I had become my own force, independent, determined, and ready for more. And then, one day, an unexpected email landed in my inbox. It was from Sam. It had been months since I last heard from Sam, my former boss, the same man who fired me over. A Zoom call like I was some intern caught stealing pens. His email was short and oddly polite. Heard about your recent work. Would love to reconnect. Maybe even explore a collaboration. I stared at the screen, unsure whether to laugh or scream. The same man who once told me I lacked long-term vision now wanted to collaborate. I didn't respond immediately. I let it sit in my inbox like a scar I no longer needed to hide. Later that week, curiosity got the better of me. I agreed to a short video call just to see his face when I told him no. When the screen lit up, there he was, still in that same office, still with that fake warmth he used whenever he needed something. "Claire," he smiled, "we really underestimated your potential. I think we could do something powerful together." I leaned back, let the silence stretch for a moment, and smiled. Not out of spite, but out of peace. "You know what, Sam? I think you're right. You did underestimate me, but I didn't. And that made all the difference." He blinked, clearly, not expecting that. I continued, "I'm building something of my own now, something better. I don't need to collaborate with people who couldn't see my worth until someone else did." And just like that, I ended the call. No yelling, no mic drop, just quiet, solid closure. That night, I stood by the window of my apartment, watching. The city lights pulse below. I wasn't just back on my feet. I was finally walking my own path. Every painful step had led me here, and this time, I wasn't asking for a seat at someone else's table. I was building my own. Claire sat across from the new investors, her hands steady, her voice sharp. The boardroom she was in now had none of the coldness of her old office. There were no fake smiles here, no masked threats. These people actually listened. They didn't care about her vacation or who she met. They cared about numbers, about leadership, about ideas. And Claire had plenty of those now, but even as she moved forward, her past didn't let go so easily. A week after her new firm announced its official launch and posted its first big client win on LinkedIn, Claire received a cease and desist letter. It was from Carson. The man who fired her was now accusing her of client poaching, breach of loyalty, and sabotaging company assets. Claire didn't flinch. She knew this wasn't about legality, it was about ego. He was humiliated. She had built something from ashes, and the smoke had drifted right into his office window. Claire's lawyer laughed while reading the letter. This isn't a threat, it's a tantrum. Still, Claire couldn't help but feel something deeper under the surface. It wasn't over. Carson was the kind of man who didn't just want to win, he wanted to see people crawl. And Claire wasn't going to give him that. Not again. One evening, as Claire walked into her new workspace, bright, quiet, buzzing with fresh ambition, she found a package on her desk. No name, no label. Inside it was a flash drive and a note. "Thought you'd want to see this. Your ex-boss wasn't done lying." Her heart tightened. Claire stared at the flash drive in her hand. It felt too light for something that now weighed so heavy on her chest. She closed her office door, drew the blinds, and slid it into her laptop. A folder popped up almost instantly. No password, no encryption, just bold words. "Confidential. Internal calls." She clicked. What she heard first was Carson's voice. Smug, confident. The audio was a recording, clearly a phone call, and Claire could recognize the other voice too. It was Thomas, one of her old colleagues who had stayed back at the firm after she was fired. "We'll bury her legally if she tries anything," Carson said in the recording. "She's too soft to go public, and I already have the board convinced. She stole client data. Doesn't matter if it's true or not. Damage will be done." Claire froze. The blood drained from her face. He was never just angry. He had planned to destroy her reputation all along. Not just to protect the company, but to make sure she'd never rise again. It wasn't just about firing her. It was about breaking her. There were more files, another audio clip, emails. One subject line hit her hard. "Client, $2 million win. Divert to my personal contacts." She opened it. Carson had rerouted the client Claire had brought in under his name just 2 days before. She was fired. The email was proof, undeniable, that not only had he lied to the board, but he had been embezzling credit for her deals. Her stomach turned, not from surprise, but from the confirmation. She leaned back in her chair, the city lights glowing behind her window. For a moment, she just breathed. All those nights she had questioned herself, all those times she had thought maybe it was my fault. They evaporated. She wasn't crazy. She wasn't overreacting. Now she had truth and power. But what would she do with it? Claire didn't sleep. That night, she couldn't. Her mind kept replaying Carson's voice over and over again. Every smirk he gave in meetings, every time he'd cut her off mid-sentence, every condescending "good job." They all made sense now. It was never about performance. It was control, ego, power. The next morning, she didn't show up at her new job. Instead, she met someone else, Lena Roy, a well-known journalist who specialized in corporate corruption cases. Claire hadn't emailed her. She showed up at the publications office with nothing but a flash drive and a firm tone. "This is going to make headlines." Lena listened to everything. Headphones on, face gradually shifting from curiosity to shock. By the time Claire was done talking, Lena looked stunned. "This isn't just a story," she said. "This is a scandal." Claire nodded. "And I'm not hiding anymore." But that wasn't all. Claire made another stop that day at a law firm, one that specialized in whistleblower cases and employer retaliation. She sat in a sleek office across from an attorney who reviewed the evidence with a straight face, then finally looked up and said, "Claire, what they did to you is not just unethical, it's illegal." By the time evening fell, Claire had done more than just collect evidence. She had filed a lawsuit not just for wrongful termination, but for defamation, corporate fraud, and theft of intellectual property. The firm had no idea what was coming. They had always seen Claire as the quiet one, the cooperative one, the kind that didn't raise her voice. They had underestimated her. Again, and now, the press was watching.